Anyway, but always great to speak to Danny Boyle. He's obviously the perfect person to make this TV series. Pistol, Disney Plus.
So, I mean, interesting. I mean, you raised the whole idea of Pistols on Disney Plus, and John Lydon getting very upset at the beginning and saying it's going to be a middle class version and blah 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 blah. So I've watched all 6 episodes, and I have very mixed feelings about it. Let's start with the positives. I think the casting is great. I do think Thomas Brodie Sangster gets McLaren's situationist stuff right, and the program is
what a situationist.
Well, he was inspired by the situationists, and all the kind of the sloganeering that he uses has got a lot of that in. But the program makes very clear that what he's doing is stealing everything from Vivienne Westwood, who at one point, I think it's in episode 6 or maybe episode 5, he refers to as "you're just the person who does the sewing." And so the program is kind of very clear on the subject. I mean, I think he gets the mannerisms right. I mean, I would do an impression of it, except I can't do an impression of it. And, Thomas Brodie Sangster really can. I also think you're absolutely right about Anson Boone, who just gets the delivery of Rotten as he was then completely spot on. I mean, it's annoying and wheedling, and people talked at the time about Richard III. I mean, one of the strange things I remember reading quite early on, somebody saying, have you noticed how much Johnny Rotten sounds like Norman Wisdom? And once you go from that into, Mr. Grimsdale, you realise they are surprisingly close. And what Anson Boone manages to do is to get that, it's sneering and weaselly and, aggressive, but it's also kind of comical and ridiculous. So a lot of the stuff has been spoken about Richard III being the influence, but actually it is Norman Wisdom. So I think the casting is really well done. I think that even though it's 6 episodes to tell the story of the Pistols, there is a certain amount of compression happening. And obviously we've all heard other versions of these stories. I mean, first told to some extent in The Great Rock and Roll Swindle, which is Julian Temple's film, which started life as Who Killed Bambi. And then again, Julian Temple then did The Filth and the Fury, which is pretty much the definitive Pistols documentary, which I think actually is a real masterpiece. And then to some extent, you get another version of it in Alex Cox's Sid and Nancy, in which the Pistols is kind of a side story to the central episode. And there's an episode in this on Nancy and Sid, which is, which focuses on those two. I think one of the issues for me is this. This is written by Craig Pearce, who worked with Baz Luhrmann, and it definitely feels like something which has been written by somebody who worked with Baz Luhrmann for all that is good and bad about this. It's very broad strokes. It has a tendency to want to turn it into a fairy tale about Steve Jones and Chrissie Hynde. Chrissie Hynde actually is the person who comes out of the whole thing as the sort of the heroine, and it's very much about Steve Jones's backstory and then Steve Jones's experience and his relationship with Malcolm and his relationship with Johnny Rotten and his relationship with Chrissie Hynde, as told in this kind of fairy tale manner. I think it absolutely pays huge dividends that the band seem to be playing, that you seem to be seeing people playing songs at first quite badly and then quite well, and then after Glenn Matlock leaves, quite badly again, because obviously Sid Vicious couldn't play bass to save his life.
Matlock was the only sort of proper musician.
And they do have the thing about Steve Jones pulling Sid Vicious's bass lead out and just turning the bass up on his guitar because he's basically playing also because Sid Vicious couldn't play. And of course Matlock is the person who's behind all those great tunes, and we also see Steve Jones creating the Sex Pistols guitar wall of sound, the Chris Spedding sound, the kind of, let's overdub loads and loads and loads of guitars. And like, am I going to get to sing at some point, or is he just going to play around with his guitar? I think the time that the wheels come off is, there are a lot of chubby hum moments, obviously, because that's how songs get written. Something happens, somebody takes an experience, they turn it into a song. And it's very hard to do that in a way which isn't clunky, as we've discussed here before. I think in things like episode 3 tries really hard to make sympathetic sense of Bodies and to deal with the issue of spitting. I think on the issue of Bodies, which is a song that I think is absolutely reprehensible, it fudges it and it tries to make it into something more palatable and nicer than it is. I mean, it's kind of unsurprising that John Lydon ended up as a Trump supporter, as you discovered when you interviewed him, and he told you that
You're so left-wing.
You're so left-wing, I'm going to vote for Trump because he's an outsider. Yeah, and suddenly everything makes sense. I think the time when it's at its best is when it's doing the ephemeral stuff in a way that's witty. So it is the McLaren behaving like a kind of, carnival pantomime. And there's an interesting comparison, I would think, between this and you've seen the Elvis movie. I haven't. But obviously they share a writer. And it was interesting to hear from Danny Boyle that Frank Cottrell Boyce had been involved in some of the rewrites, which was fascinating. So the music played live works well. The story itself is cartoony, although the fact is the Sex Pistols were always cartoony. I referred you to that book by Tony Parsons and Judy Burchill, The Boy Looked at Johnny, which basically sort of said, all of this is nonsense. And the two people who were the real heroes of the punk movement were Tom Robinson and Polly Styrene, which I think there is a very good argument to be made about. The Sex Pistols were always a pantomime performance. They were, however, a pantomime performance that was quite scary at first. And clearly punk broke something open and liberated a whole bunch of people, because the amount of people who, because of punk, got up and formed bands who wouldn't have done so otherwise, it's what came afterwards that was important. So this is a sort of fairy tale, which weirdly enough makes it suitable for Disney, because amidst all the spitting and the swearing and the episode, which I can't say the name of because it has that word in it, it is a fairy tale. And that is what it is. But there are some very there are some very good performances in the fairy tale, and the songs work well because they do sound like they're being played by a band figuring out how to play. What did you think?
I was mistrusted. I mean, I enjoyed it, and
it's enjoyable.
It is enjoyable, and it's a period drama set in a period that I kind of remember, and I slightly distrust a period drama that says, "Hey, we're going to be setting it in the '60s," and the '60s is always portrayed
everything like
something
this, and it's great.
And I just wanted to say, 1974, 1975, I thought was great. It was modern, it was contemporary. I was listening to music. I liked Rick Wakeman, which they cut to Rick Wakeman doing Six Wives of Henry. I like that stuff. I still like that stuff. It wasn't all terrible before, and they didn't save music, anything like that. Anyway, but I still enjoyed it because of the casting, like you said, and because it's nice to see that on the television.
And it's interesting that we were just talking before. Thomas Brodie Sangster looks very, very young.
I think he looks.
He is the same age that McLaren was. He's 30. And McLaren was 31.
Like he's 15, though.
Yeah, but he gets the mannerisms. Don't you think he gets the mannerisms spot on?
Absolutely. And the voice is absolutely spot on.
Yeah. So,
anyway, so where can I see Pistol?
You can see Pistol on Disney Plus.
Excellent.
And again, it's kind of like if Rotten ever wanted ammunition for complaining about it, it's on Disney.